What if the cheapest homes in California aren't hidden gems at all, but hard truths no one warned you about? Homes priced under $150,000, tucked into so-called hidden havens, make it feel like the California dream hasn't completely disappeared. But the more people look at that picture, the louder the conflicting voices become. Some call these places forgotten paradises. Others say it plainly, they're cheap for a reason. And suddenly, the conversation isn't just about whether you should buy or not. It's about what you're willing to give up. Are these 10 locations truly an escape for people trying to settle down on a tight budget? Or are they only realistic options when you're exhausted from chasing a version of California that keeps getting more expensive? Stay with me as we unpack why some people walk away and why others still choose to stay. Number 1, Groveland. There's a question that often comes up whenever Groveland is mentioned. Why does a quiet mountain town like this keep showing up on lists of California's more realistic low-cost places to live for many people? The first reaction is skepticism. It feels too remote, too quiet, too inconvenient if something goes wrong medically. Those concerns aren't imaginary. Groveland is a small town in the Sierra Nevada foothills, sitting close to 3,000 feet above sea level, roughly an hour from larger medical centers. There's no public transportation to rely on. Winters can be cold, and snow is part of life here. For anyone used to living near hospitals, shopping centers, and walkable services, Groveland can feel like a stretch. What sets Groveland apart is that it doesn't come with the more extreme downsides that tend to define many other low-priced towns in California. It isn't surrounded by heavy industrial agriculture. It doesn't sit near a shrinking or polluted lake, and it doesn't endure months of relentless triple-digit heat. Summers here are noticeably cooler than in the Central Valley, and air quality is generally more stable. For older adults who have spent years dealing with heat stress, pollution, or breathing issues, that difference affects daily comfort in a very real way. Housing in Groveland isn't the cheapest in the state, but it stands out for something else. Livability, smaller homes, older cabins, and modest properties still appear in the $150,000 to $180,000 range. These are real houses on real land, often with trees, privacy, and quiet surroundings. Thanks to California's Proposition 13, property taxes remain predictable. A home priced around $170,000 often carries an annual tax bill under $2,000, and for people living on fixed incomes, that kind of stability matters far more than cosmetic upgrades. Day-to-day living costs are generally manageable. Utility bills often fall between $140 and $160 a month, helped by cooler summers and modest home sizes. Grocery costs are lower than in major urban areas, and the pace of life doesn't push people toward constant spending. A retired couple bringing in around $2,000 to $2,500 a month from Social Security can realistically cover housing, food, utilities, and insurance without the constant stress of sudden cost increases. Healthcare remains an important consideration. Groveland itself has basic clinics but no major hospital. Full medical services in Sonora are about a 40-minute drive away, with larger regional hospitals still within a reasonable distance. For retirees who are still able to drive and don't require frequent specialist care, this arrangement works. Many residents rely on Medicare, Medi-Cal, and supplemental coverage, planning medical visits more deliberately rather than reacting to emergencies. There are also support programs that quietly help reduce financial pressure. Low-income seniors may qualify for SNAP benefits, utility assistance, and senior property tax relief programs offered by California. For homeowners over 55 who relocate within the state, Proposition 19 may allow the transfer of a lower property tax base from a previous home, further reducing long-term expenses. These programs don't make life luxurious, but they do make it more stable. What ultimately keeps some retirees in Groveland isn't the price tag alone, it's the pace of life. Mornings are quiet, neighbors recognize each other. Nights are dark enough to see the stars. For some people, that level of quiet feels isolating. For others, especially those worn down by decades of financial pressure, it feels like relief. Groveland isn't a perfect fit, and it never claims to be, but among the remaining places in California that are still within reach for lower-income retirees, it offers a rare balance. The drawbacks are real, but they're manageable. And the advantages, clean air, stability, and a slower rhythm of life, are equally real for those willing to trade convenience for peace. Groveland represents a choice grounded in reality, not wishful thinking. Number 2, Oakdale. Oakdale doesn't announce itself as a bargain, and that's exactly why some people trust it more. It's often called the cowboy capital of the world, a small Central Valley town where life still feels structured, familiar, and grounded. When Oakdale appears in conversations about affordable living, reactions are mixed. Some viewers argue it doesn't belong on any list tied to low-cost housing. They point out that prices here aren't rock bottom, that homes under $150,000 are rare, and that California is still California when it comes to taxes and utilities. Those criticisms aren't exaggerated. Oakdale is not a miracle town where everything suddenly becomes cheap. Housing is the first reality check. Oakdale's median home price sits well above the desert and remote mountain towns. Most listings fall in the $180,000 to $250,000 range for older, smaller homes, with fixer-uppers occasionally dipping lower for buyers, strictly capped at $150,000. Newcomers to Oakdale may simply be out of reach unless they're looking at mobile homes or very limited inventory. Property taxes, while protected under Proposition 13, are still tied to a higher purchase price than places like Groveland. That alone rules Oakdale out for some retirees on very tight budgets. But what Oakdale offers in return is a level of stability that many cheaper towns struggle to provide. This is not a place defined by abandonment or decline. Neighborhoods are intact, streets are maintained, local businesses are still operating, not just surviving. Crime rates are relatively low compared to similarly priced areas, and the town has a strong sense of order that appeals to people who don't want to feel like they're constantly watching their back. Healthcare access is another reason Oakdale stays in the conversation. Residents have nearby clinics and hospitals, with larger medical centers in Modesto within easy driving distance for retirees who anticipate regular doctor visits or ongoing care. This proximity reduces stress in a way that cheaper, more remote towns simply can't. You don't have to plan your life around medical trips here, they fit into your routine. Daily living costs in Oakdale are not minimal, but they are predictable. Utility bills often average around $150 to $160 per month. Grocery prices are lower than in coastal cities and comparable to other Central Valley towns. There's no pressure to constantly spend just to access basic services. A retired couple living on a fixed income of around $2,500 to $3,000 a month can manage expenses without feeling squeezed every time a bill arrives. Lifestyle is where Oakdale quietly earns its appeal. The town has a walkable historic downtown, community events, local festivals, and a rhythm that feels familiar rather than rushed. Nearby rivers, trails, and open land offer outdoor options without requiring a long drive. This isn't a place people move to escape society. It's a place they choose to stay connected, just at a slower pace. Oakdale does have its drawbacks. Summers are hot, and air quality can dip during wildfire season. It's not culturally vibrant in the way larger cities are, and younger professionals may find it limiting. For some retirees, the fact that it isn't dramatically cheaper than other states raises a fair question. Why stay in California at all? And that question is the one Oakdale quietly forces people to confront. Is the goal to find the cheapest possible place to survive, or a place that costs a bit more but asks you to give up less of your daily comfort and dignity? Oakdale doesn't promise escape from California's cost. What it offers instead is something subtler, a version of California that still feels livable. As we move to the next location, the trade-off becomes sharper. What happens when affordability improves, but convenience and access begin to fade? That's where the conversation gets more complicated. Number 3, Porterville. Porterville feels like a compromise you make with your eyes open. It doesn't pretend to be charming in the way mountain towns do, and it doesn't shock you with rock-bottom prices either. Instead, it sits quietly in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, doing what many Central Valley towns do best, offering space, structure, and just enough services to function without drama. When people talk about Porterville, the reactions are split. Some say it's overlooked and practical. Others say it's hot, dusty, and uninspiring. Both sides have a point. On the downside, Porterville carries the realities of the Central Valley. Summers are hot, often pushing past 95 degrees, and air quality can suffer during wildfire season or agricultural cycles. The town isn't culturally vibrant, and nightlife is minimal. Employment options outside agriculture, healthcare, and education are limited, which makes it a poor fit for younger professionals or anyone still building income. For people who picture retirement as constant entertainment or convenience, Porterville can feel flat. Housing, however, is where Porterville keeps entering the conversation. While the median home price is higher than the cheapest towns in California, listings in the $180,000 to $220,000 range are common, and smaller properties do occasionally drop closer to $150,000. Rentals remain within reach as well, especially compared to Fresno or Bakersfield. Under Proposition 13, property taxes stay predictable, giving retirees long-term cost certainty that matters more than short-term savings. Porterville's biggest advantage over cheaper alternatives is infrastructure. Sierra View Medical Center provides local hospital care, and larger medical facilities in Visalia are less than an hour away. That alone separates Porterville from many lower-cost towns, where healthcare access becomes a constant worry for retirees managing chronic conditions or planning ahead. This level of access changes how livable a place feels. Daily expenses are manageable but not unusually low. Utilities often run between $140 and $160 per month. Groceries and basic services cost less than in major cities, though not dramatically so. A retired couple living on a fixed income of around $3,000 to $3,500 per month can cover housing, food, healthcare, and utilities without constant financial strain, assuming expectations remain realistic. Lifestyle in Porterville is quiet and routine-driven. Neighborhoods are established, streets are functional, and community life centers around schools, churches, and local events rather than attractions. For some, that simplicity feels limiting. For others, especially those exhausted by financial uncertainty, it feels grounding. Porterville ultimately raises a hard question. Is retirement about escaping discomfort or about managing it intelligently? The town doesn't eliminate California's challenges, but it reduces their intensity. As we move to the next location, the balance shifts again. What happens when housing becomes cheaper, but services begin to thin out? That's where the next trade-off starts to matter. Number 4, Hanford. What if the reason some California towns still feel livable isn't because they're cheap, but because they were never swept up in the frenzy to become something else? Hanford sits quietly in the Central Valley, rarely trending, rarely hyped, and often overlooked. When people talk about Hanford, the reactions are usually restrained. Few call it exciting, some question why anyone would choose it at all. And yet, for a certain group of retirees, Hanford keeps resurfacing as a place that works. Not perfectly, but consistently. The drawbacks are easy to spot. Hanford is hot for much of the year, with summer temperatures regularly climbing into the triple digits. Air quality can decline during wildfire season or heavy agricultural periods. Entertainment options are limited, and cultural life doesn't compare to larger cities. If someone associates retirement with variety, dining scenes, or constant activity, Hanford will feel slow, even dull. These criticisms are not exaggerated. Life here moves at a steady, predictable pace. And that pace isn't for everyone. Housing, however, is where Hanford quietly holds its ground. While prices are higher than the most extreme low-cost towns, detached homes with yards still appear under $200,000, and occasional listings fall closer to the $150,000 range. Compared to coastal California, this is a dramatic difference. Property taxes remain manageable under Proposition 13, allowing homeowners to plan long-term without worrying about sudden spikes. For retirees on fixed incomes, that predictability matters more than headline prices. Daily expenses in Hanford are moderate by California standards. Utility bills often average around $150 per month. Groceries are less expensive than in Fresno and significantly cheaper than in coastal cities. Local restaurants remain affordable, and basic services don't carry the premium pricing seen in larger metros. A retiree living on $2,500 to $3,000 per month can cover housing, food, utilities, and health care without constant financial stress, provided expectations stay grounded. Lifestyle in Hanford is structured around routine and community. Tree-lined neighborhoods, farmers markets, church events, and a traditional downtown create a sense of continuity. This isn't a place built for reinvention. It's a place built for stability. For some, that feels limiting. For others, especially those tired of uncertainty, it feels reassuring. Plus one. Number 5, Tulare. Tulare isn't the kind of place that sparks excitement the moment you hear its name. It's the type of town people start paying attention to only when they're forced to rethink what living in California actually costs. It's not a resort destination, and it's not shockingly cheap either. Yet Tulare keeps showing up in conversations about places where settling down is still financially possible. That lack of flash is exactly what divides opinion. Some see a town that's hot, repetitive, and uninspiring. Others see a place with workable infrastructure, housing that hasn't completely slipped out of reach, and a pace of life slow enough to keep expenses under control. The downsides aren't hard to find. Tulare sits squarely in the Central Valley, which means long, hot summers with temperatures regularly climbing into the high 90s. Air quality can suffer during wildfire season or peak agricultural periods. There isn't much nightlife to speak of. Cultural events are limited, and dining options don't change much from week to week. For anyone who imagined retirement as an active chapter filled with stimulation and variety, Tulare can feel repetitive and flat. Where Tulare holds its ground is practicality. Home prices here, while no longer dirt cheap, remain well below California's statewide average. Smaller homes, older properties, or houses in need of updates still appear in the $150,000 to $180,000 range. Rental costs are also more manageable than in nearby Fresno or Visalia. Thanks to Proposition 13, property taxes remain predictable, allowing retirees to plan long-term without worrying about sudden spikes that can derail a fixed income. Healthcare is another meaningful advantage. Adventist Health Tulare provides hospital services right in town, while larger medical centers in Visalia and Fresno are only a short drive away. For retirees managing chronic conditions or thinking ahead about long-term care, this level of access matters. It's a clear step up from cheaper towns where medical care becomes a constant logistical concern. Everyday living costs in Tulare are generally manageable. Utility bills often hover around $150 per month. Grocery prices are lower than in coastal cities and relatively stable within the region. On a fixed income of roughly $2,500 to $3,000 per month, a retired couple can realistically cover housing, food, healthcare, and utilities without living in a constant state of financial anxiety. In the end, Tulare forces a question many people try to avoid. Is retirement about finding a place that feels exciting or a place that feels manageable? Tulare doesn't eliminate California's challenges, but it keeps them within bounds. And as we move to the next location, that balance shifts again. What happens when housing becomes even cheaper, but essential services begin to thin out? That's when the trade-offs become harder to ignore. Number 6, Grass Valley. Grass Valley feels different the moment it comes up. Unlike many lower-cost towns that enter the conversation because people are forced to look for a place to land, Grass Valley is often mentioned because people actually want to live there. It's a foothill town in Nevada County, shaped by its gold rush history, surrounded by pine forests, and known for a slower, more intentional pace of life. For retirees, Grass Valley sits in a middle space. Not the cheapest option, but also not weighed down by extreme drawbacks. The limitations need to be acknowledged. Home prices here are higher than in most Central Valley towns. Homes under $150,000 are relatively rare and usually limited to small condos, older properties, or mobile homes in well-managed parks. Wildfire risk is a real concern in Northern California, and smoke during fire season can affect air quality. Winters are colder than in the valley, and snow is simply part of living here. For retirees on very tight budgets or those with serious respiratory conditions, these factors can be significant obstacles. At the same time, Grass Valley offers advantages that many cheaper locations simply don't. The town has a strong sense of community, with a walkable downtown filled with local shops, cafes, music venues, and regular community events. Healthcare access is solid for a town of its size, with nearby clinics and hospitals and larger medical centers within a reasonable driving distance. That level of access provides reassurance for older adults thinking long-term. Living costs beyond housing are generally manageable. Utility expenses are comparable to other foothill towns, and grocery prices are more reasonable than in coastal California. For those who qualify for Medicare, Medi-Cal, SNAP, or utility assistance programs, the higher housing costs can often be partially offset, especially for retirees who own their homes outright or choose smaller living spaces. Number 7, Lake Isabella. Lake Isabella feels like a place people arrive at after ruling out both extremes. It isn't as isolated as the desert towns, and it isn't as built up or expensive as more popular foothill communities. Sitting in the southern Sierra region of Kern County, Lake Isabella offers a slower pace of life centered around water, mountains, and space, which immediately appeals to some retirees and worries others. The drawbacks are clear. This is a rural area, and services are limited. There is no major hospital in town, and residents often drive to Ridgecrest or Bakersfield for more advanced medical care. Summer temperatures can still be high, and job opportunities are scarce. Shopping, dining, and entertainment options are modest, which can feel restrictive for people used to variety or convenience. On the other hand, Lake Isabella offers a type of affordability that doesn't come with total isolation. Homes in the $130,000 to $180,000 range still appear, particularly older houses or smaller properties. Property taxes remain manageable under Proposition 13, and the overall cost of living is lower than many parts of California. Utilities and groceries are generally affordable, and the lifestyle naturally encourages lower spending. What draws people here is the environment. The lake, surrounding hills, and open skies create a sense of calm that's hard to price. For retirees who value quiet mornings, outdoor walks, and a slower rhythm, Lake Isabella can feel like a reset. The question it raises is simple but important. How much convenience are you willing to give up for space, affordability, and peace? Number 8, Susanville. Susanville is not a place people talk about with excitement. It's a place they talk about with caution and sometimes with curiosity. Located in Lassen County, far from California's major metros, Susanville sits at the edge of the high desert and the Sierra, offering a version of California that feels removed from the state most people recognize. The drawbacks are hard to ignore. Susanville is remote, shopping options are limited, flights require long drives, and specialized health care often means traveling to Reno or other larger cities. Winters are cold, snow is common, and the local economy has long been tied to correctional facilities and government jobs. For retirees who rely on frequent medical care or want constant convenience, these realities can feel restrictive. At the same time, Susanville offers something increasingly rare in California: genuinely low housing costs without extreme heat or dense pollution. Stick-built homes under $150,000 are still possible, not just mobile homes or land lease properties. Property taxes remain low under Proposition 13, and everyday expenses like groceries and utilities are generally manageable. For retirees on fixed incomes, that stability matters. Susanville also benefits from cleaner air than much of the Central Valley and cooler summers than desert towns. Life here is quiet and predictable. With little pressure to spend or keep up appearances, Susanville raises a blunt question. Is retirement about staying connected to everything, or about finally stepping away from it? Number 9, Calipatria. Calipatria is one of those names that immediately divides opinion. For some, it represents the last affordable corner of California. For others, it's a warning sign. Located in Imperial County near the Salton Sea and below sea level, Calipatria is often cited as an example of how extreme affordability comes with equally extreme trade-offs. The downsides are impossible to soften. Summers here are brutally hot, with temperatures regularly climbing above 105 degrees. Air quality is a serious concern, influenced by desert dust and the environmental decline of the Salton Sea. Job opportunities are limited, amenities are sparse, and the town feels isolated from the rest of the state. For many retirees, especially those with health issues, these factors alone are enough to rule Calipatria out. And yet Calipatria continues to appear in conversations for one reason: cost. Homes under $150,000 are not theoretical here. They exist, often as small single-family houses on owned land. Property taxes are low under Proposition 13, and California does not tax Social Security income. For retirees living on very limited monthly checks, that math is hard to ignore. Daily living expenses are also lower than most of California, from utilities to groceries. Basic health care is accessible within a short drive, though specialized care requires travel. Calipatria forces a stark question. When affordability reaches its extreme, what are you willing to endure in return for financial stability? Plus one. Number 10, Sonora. Sonora often feels like the place people end up when they want affordability without giving up too much structure. As the county seat of Tuolumne County, Sonora is larger and more established than many mountain towns nearby, and that difference shows up quickly in daily life. It has a functioning downtown, regular services, and a rhythm that feels lived in rather than temporary. The drawbacks are real. Sonora is not cheap by desert or remote standards. Homes under $150,000 are limited and usually smaller, older, or in need of updates. Wildfire risk is part of life in this region, and smoke can affect air quality during fire season. Winters are colder than the valley, and snow is something residents plan around. For retirees on very tight budgets or those who want warm weather year-round, these factors can be discouraging. What keeps Sonora in the conversation is balance. It has a full-service hospital, clinics, and specialists that many cheaper towns simply don't. Shopping, dining, and basic amenities are close by, reducing the need for long drives. Property taxes remain predictable under Proposition 13, and daily living costs are more manageable than in coastal California. Sonora raises a final question worth considering. Is retirement about finding the absolute lowest price, or finding a place that supports everyday life with fewer compromises? There is no perfect place on this list, and that's the most important truth to acknowledge. Every town represents a different trade-off between cost, health, convenience, and peace of mind. For some, it means giving up convenience to gain financial stability. For others, it means paying more to protect daily quality of life. The real question isn't which place is best, but which one fits your situation right now. If this conversation reflects the choices you're wrestling with, please like the video and subscribe to Tax Hack Pro. We'll continue sharing grounded, honest perspectives on housing, living costs, and the difficult decisions retirees face every day. Thanks so much for sticking with us to the very end. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the daily updates. And now feel free to check out some of our latest and most popular videos shown on your screen. Goodbye and see you in the next one.